I'm Andrea Hayley-Sankaran. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm making tomato salsa. That's right, beautiful tomato salsa. And I make that every fall and can it to preserve it for the winter time because I have a garden and my garden produces a pile of tomatoes. This is just some of the tomatoes that we have ready to go now. But the other day we had over 100 tomatoes, which is what resulted in 9 jars of this tomato salsa. And there's a little bit of a story behind how this tomato salsa came to be. We actually traveled to India for about 16 days, right at the time when the tomatoes were going to be ready to harvest. And so I didn't know what was going to happen to my tomato plants. There was going to be no watering over that time. So were they going to die? Were the tomatoes going to rot on the vine? Well, what happened was when we got home, they had all fallen from the vines and were, piled underneath, just ready to pick up. And not too many of them were damaged by animals or insects. So we were really fortunate. We got almost 100 tomatoes, perfect and ready to process. And so that's when I decided I would be making the tomato salsa. But then because of the time zone difference, there was 9.5 hours difference. I was literally up at 12:30 in the morning making this salsa through the early morning hours. So as you continue to watch this video, you'll see me, going through these steps, and it might look a little bit dark, and that's because it was literally the middle of the night. And so I would say that the process of making these tomatoes was a calming process for me, a way to ground and arrive here back at home in New York. So I'm a pretty sensitive person, and I feel things deeply, and there was a lot to experience and feel while in India. And so let's say that the process or the steps of making this tomato salsa were also processes and steps in mindfulness and calming. So that's how cooking is for me. As you know, it's a process of relaxation, actually, when you can truly give yourself the time to do something and not be in a rush and just be present and experience the beauty of the process. So as you watch this video, I want you to be thinking about that and thinking about how you can give yourself time to, make something like a big batch of tomato salsa. And so, because I want you to actually be able to make this salsa, let's just look at the equipment that's needed, and then we'll go through all the steps. So first of all, you need some canning jars. So this is a smaller size. I'm not sure, I don't know what the jars are called actually. Small jar, medium jar, and then there's a bigger jar. I like putting the salsa in these medium jars. Once you open it up, you'll want to use it within, say, a week to 10 days. That's about how long it'll last after it's opened. So you need jars. And you also need perfectly good canning lids. So that refers to this band, this red band that is around the edge. It's got a little bit of rubberization. And then you need the ring. So there's the band and the ring, the two things. And when you put the food into the jar, you put the band on, and then you tighten the ring, and then you process it. We're going to process it in a hot water bath. So this is a hot water bath canning method. And what happens is that red ring gets suctioned down onto the rim of the jar, and that's what creates the seal. So you want to make sure you have brand new lids whenever you're doing canning. And so you'll need to find something like this. So this is just the jars and the lids, or sorry, the rings and the bands. And these jars can be reused many times, but as I'm saying, the red The red ring, you need fresh each time that you're canning. So that's why you buy these things separately. And in fact, you can get just the lids too, because the rings also last longer. So here's a container with just the lids. So you might not even know these are available, but now you do. So you'll need that. And you'll also want to buy like a canning kit, because this tool here is indispensable. And this tool, so you hold with your hands here to manipulate it. It's a big size tong. And you can imagine that you actually use it to lift up the jars. So when the jars are super hot in your hot water bath, it's boiling and it's underwater, you use this jar lifter, I believe it's called, to lift up the jars. So you'll want to get that tool. And you'll also want to get a funnel. So a funnel, it makes it a lot easier when you're transferring the hot salsa into the jars. So you can get a kit with the funnel and the jar lifter pretty inexpensively. So look for that. And then the final thing, and probably the most important thing, because you can't do canning if you don't have this piece of equipment. And this is what I use. So it's basically a giant pot, and I got this one because it has this convenient steamer container. So I believe this is a giant pasta pot, which of course I've never cooked this much pasta before, but it is really convenient for holding the jars inside this container, and it holds them off of the bottom so that they're not going to crack or break. So you need a large pot, and this one can fit 5 of this size jar at a time. So I can process 5 jars at a time, and that's pretty much all you need. And then of course you just need the recipe that you're going to be using. So I have a great recipe on the Buttered Veg website. It involves tomatoes, jalapeno peppers, red onion, and cilantro, and lime juice, and tomato paste, and salt, and if you like, you can put some extra red chili, but that's basically it. And the proportions are really nice. I actually call it Kanan's tomato salsa because that's my husband's name, and he loves salsa. He loves salsa because it's so exciting and stimulating, and it is. And the great thing about tomato salsa as well is that it is very low fat. And so if you're looking for an exciting, flavorful, low fat treat or a condiment, and you can think about all the versatile ways you can use salsa. Like, of course, the most obvious way is with chips, right? Tortilla chips and salsa. But think about, all the various Mexican dishes you could make. You could actually put tomato salsa in rice and make a Mexican style rice, or, rice and beans and add some salsa on the side, or, have your cheese quesadilla and dip it in salsa. So there's a lot of ways that you can enjoy salsa. Salsa goes great with Mexican food, of course, but as a vegetarian, think about some steamed vegetables with a grain bowl, and then using salsa as a flavorful condiment to go with that. So, salsa, wonderful, a way to capture the summer garden and enjoy it over the winter. So if you're ready to know, let's go through the steps of making the salsa. And the first thing you're going to see is actually my garden and all those tomatoes dropping after our India vacation, and actually seeing what it looks like. And then my husband picks up the tomatoes and then he washes them and lines them all up perfectly for me, so that I can actually dig in and make the salsa. So that's the story, and I hope you enjoy the process and that it helps you to successfully make your own salsa. All right, let's do it.
Just came home to the garden, and we can see the tomatoes have actually planted themselves on the ground. So many of them. Oh wow. It's as if like they're waiting to be just plucked. Wow. That is just amazing. Everything is grown. Wow, look at so many flowers.
Everything's doing well.
Yeah, wow. Look at this. Look at these. Wow. Look at these. So many flowers.
So many. Uh-oh.
This is, wow, tomatoes, more tomatoes on there. Look at these, what do you call these? What kind of lettuce? Leafy greens.
Those are the leafy greens that we eat.
Leafy
The ones I was
greens.
talking about.
Yes. So this is lettuce, right? What kind of lettuce is
No,
this?
no, those are Asian greens.
Asian green,
Kale.
kale.
And mustard greens.
Kale is, wow, I don't know what is where.
Swiss chard.
Swiss chard.
Just a whole variety of leaves that we eat.
This is basil, right?
That's Thai basil.
Thai basil.
And regular basil.
Regular basil. Wow. So the tomatoes are in the water now, and I have just like loosely washed them. And now the idea is to take them and put them over here, spread them out over here properly, maybe so they can dry, and then eventually dry them completely. There you go. There's a lot of tomatoes, so I have to be.
I'm gonna make salsa.
Yeah, Andrea may make salsa and more, I guess. Anyway, that's it. Laid out the tomatoes, and the interesting thing is that I can now count them, and I did. So the first two rows have 8 in them. So that's 16, 25, 9 in the third, then 10 in all of them. So 8, 16, 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 5 here, 80, 85, 90, 92, 94, and there's a few not so good ones. If I had counted them and they were all good, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I would have got 105 tomatoes. That would have been a giant feast. That's it for today.
So here I am, chopping tomatoes to make my salsa, and I'm chopping them about 2 cups at a time. And so I'm measuring each 2 cup increment, placing it into this strainer, and then counting on my sheet. I'm actually up to 7, which means a total of 14 cups. And I've got some more to go here, probably another 3, so I'll probably end up having 20 cups in total. And I'll be adding salt into these tomatoes here. And you can see that hopefully you can see that there's juice that's starting to come out. And the salt is going to help to bring out even more of the juice. And that's part of the process of making this salsa and canning it. So I'll show you how that works in the next step. Actually, I wanted to show you how I'm chopping the tomatoes. So they still have the stems. I'm just taking off the ends, placing them on the end, chopping in half, and then slicing into 3, lining up those slices so that it's easy to chop here. It's much harder to chop into the skin. So opening it up and then just slicing quite finely. So taking off the end there, once in half, then into 3s, lining them up, and then chop, 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 chop. Okay, and of course I sharpened the knife before starting because you always want a sharp knife when chopping tomatoes. There we go. Okay, and continuing on. All right, so I have some jalapeños here. These are from the garden. Beautiful, tight, crisp jalapeños. And this is a jalapeno that I purchased. Notice the difference in size. humongous. So I'm going to add those. And then I've already added the onions, which I finely chopped. And I've got 2 containers here. And the salt is in there. And you can see that the salt, oh, that's heavy, is starting to bring out the juice. So more on that later. And to save myself and my fingers getting all spicy and burning, I'm going to use the mini chopper grinder to chop these up. And then I'm going to add it in and mix that together. I have to show you that because that was killer. That was about 5 seconds of chopping. Just the perfect tool for jalapeños chopped finely. Of course, the cilantro's there waiting to go, the fresh lemon juice, all the things that are going into the salsa. All right, so we'll add that in. Let's mix this together. So here is the salsa before it gets heated and processed. And so I've added tomato paste for thickening. So the tomato paste is now kind of raw. And here you can see all the water that was strained off from the tomatoes using salt, has been collected into this pot, and I simmered it, I boiled it for about 20 minutes to reduce it. I also took some of the watery liquid off, so I concentrated the tomato juices to combine with the tomatoes in here. And it's important to have a somewhat watery consistency to fill the jars so that the jars are filled without any gaps. And so that's what that is. And I still have to, so I'm going to fill the jars by actually taking minimal amount of liquid, and then I'm going to add the remaining tomatoes. And I'm just heating these up so they're warm going into the jars. I'm not trying to boil the potatoes, or the tomatoes, sorry, here. The next thing is, this is my pot for canning. This is a water bath, well, it's what I'm using for a water bath canner. It's actually a large steamer. And I've got my jars in here, and it is just about starting to boil. And this pot has 2 levels. So there's it actually goes down to here with the what is it? It's like a basket, right? So the water is able to go through, and so it's holding the jars off of the bottom of the pot so that nothing cracks, or, and so that nothing cracks. And so I'm just going to wait until this really boils. Oops, got a nice bit of steam there. And then I'm going to be removing these jars and filling them. So I'm going to fill, hot salsa into hot jars, and then I'm going to put them back in for 20 minutes boiling in order to seal them. So I'll show you the next step. Okay, so now we're boiling, and I've got this fancy tool here. This is an essential tool when canning, because you can go into this boiling hot container and grab the jar, and what I'm going to do is dump the water out. So now I have a boiling hot jar, and I'm going to set that down. Grab the next one. Obviously very careful, since that's boiling hot. And we'll set all 6 jars there. And I can only do 6 at a time, so I'll have to do this in 2 batches. Okay, so I've got everything set up here, ready to go. I've brought the filling over beside my hot jars, and actually it was 5 jars. And I've got this nice funnel to make it easier to fill. And now I'm gonna scoop this out. I want to preserve some of the liquid because I wasn't able to fit all the tomatoes in here. So I'm gonna minimize the amount of liquid that I put in so that there's some left for the remaining tomatoes. So it's gonna be a two-step process of draining off liquid, filling the jar, draining off liquid, and filling the jar. And you want to fill the jar to about 1/4 of an inch space. 1/4 of an inch to half an inch space. So let's see. Okay, so we can still put more, a bit more. It always amazes me how much you can actually put in here. And you know what? I just realized I forgot to put the cilantro. I wanted to add the cilantro at the last minute, and then I forgot. So let's just add a little bit more without the funnel. There we go. And I'll just leave the cilantro out of that one. But for this one, let's add some cilantro. A good amount here. And stir that in. Try to keep the cilantro as fresh as possible. There we go. This is going to be hot, but there we go. The next one. Okay, so I'll just finish filling these up and I'll show you what to do next. So you can see that we've got that edge left at the top, and I've taken a cloth and carefully cleaned off that edge. So you want that edge really clean. And then in a separate pot, I've heated up the lids, and these are brand new, and that is important. You never want to reuse one of these that has been previously used for canning because that red, material gets suctioned on to the jar, and that's what does the sealing. So you want to make sure you have a good original seal. Uh-oh, it's not coming apart. Okay. See if I can get it here. I'll take another one. There we go. Okay, and then onto the top it goes. This one here is kind of stuck together. There we go. Okay, and on. And then once that's fitted on, you can put on your ring, and the ring goes on just like finger tight, not tight, but finger tight, because I believe you want to allow for some release if needed. So you don't want to tighten it, over tighten it, just like finger tight, just tight, not super tight. And then we'll be dropping those into the water bath in the next step. So the jars are in there, and you can see that is boiling. So it's once they start boiling after you put the jars in that you set the timer. So I'm setting my timer for 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, I will be taking those out. All right, so here we have the fruits of all that labor. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 jars. 9-pint jars. Awesome. So the last step, okay, so actually, after I took them out of the water, it took not very long at all, probably about 5 minutes for these lids to indent. So you can see, I don't know if you can see that they go slightly down in the center. And that is just, so these were under pressure slightly when they were in the water, underwater, boiling water. And then when I took it out, there was a kind of suctioning that took place as it began to cool. And that suctioning just suctioned this lid down, which seals it. And so that's how that works. And so what I like to do is take the rings off completely. And then you want to clean up, wash the jars and the lids really well so that there's no residue left. Dry them and make sure they're all sealed. So make sure they're all sealed. You can even try to remove the lid just to make sure. And then you want to wash and dry them. And then the last step will just be to label these lids with the date and what's inside. And then I'll be storing them in the basement, and we will enjoy these very much so in the wintertime, this taste of the summer garden. I'm already working on the first jar of salsa. And let's see how it tastes. It's so good. It's like zingy, spicy, exciting. Like just captured the freshness of nature. Yum! Go and make salsa. Enjoy your salsa. Bye for now.